Today's sponsor is Loot Crate. For less than $20 a month, Loot Crate gives the geek in you a special treat every month. Loot Crate's a subscription box service with $40 worth of geek, gamer, and pop culture gear, collectibles, apparel, comics, and more delivered to your mailbox every month. This month, they're bringing you a fight for the ages. Suit up, choose your allies, and enter the arena for combat. They're ready to stand their ground this month, and exclusive items from Blizzard, Fallout 4, Capcom, sponsor-worthy loot from the Hunger Games, as well as a few more items will help your winners emerge victorious in this box. You have until the 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific to subscribe and receive that month's crate. And when the cutoff happens, that's it. It's over. So go to lootcrate.com/KFGames and enter code KFGames to save $3 on your new subscription today. The final topic of the day, as always, brought to you by the beautiful people that are yourselves. The beautiful people. Over at kindoffunny.com/forums. Go to the Gamecast topic, or Gamecast
thread
sub-forum, go to the thread, fill out the stuff. You can also go to kindoffunny.com/Gamescast topic.
That's an easier way
and
to do
it'll be
it.
a good old time. I should have just said that from the beginning. But the first question comes from our boy Alex Cross, who we yesterday did a Google Hangout with.
Right.
Excellent kid.
Supported us over at patreon.com.
Big fan of that guy.
games.
And he had a question for us that I'm like, I like that a lot. What would get you to pre-order a game? You know, we live in this world where back in the day, pre-orders to me at least felt a little bit more natural as part of
there was
what
limited
I did.
supply.
Yeah, so I wanted to make sure I got F-Zero GX on the GameCube. You know,
Sure.
I wanted to make sure Devil May Cry 2. I'm so upset about that, but I wanted it.
Right.
All those things, it was just more of like, I know I'm going to buy this game, so I might as well.
Do you pre-order games often?
I did.
Now, though.
Never.
Really?
And I mean, well, that's the thing. Yeah, never. Like, do you guys?
Yeah.
Really?
No.
I mean, what I don't think pre-order means what it used to mean. Pre-order to me used to mean, oh man, I want Perfect Dark on day one, so I'm gonna go do it. And hey, I got a fanny pack out of the deal. That was whatever, cool. I got that. You'd go there because I had those days where I'd show up at EB and Electronics Boutique still. I'd go into EB and try to get the game, and they'd be like, oh, we only got 2 and we're out. And then you go to Target and they didn't have it, and you'd be screwed, right? So that's why I started pre-ordering. Now I digitally pre-order everything if I'm gonna buy it, right? I'm like, oh, I want that. If we're not gonna get it, through a review thing or whatever, when it comes down to that point, I'm like, well, I want that. I want to make sure I have that to go as soon as possible. And for me, it comes down to brand loyalty more than anything, right? Like I know, here's a great example, right? Fallout 4. Fallout 4 is announced finally. Hooray! I'm gonna buy Fallout 4 for sure. I'm probably gonna love Fallout 4 for sure. Awesome. But then they say we're putting out the limited edition with the Pip-Boy, and I'm like, I love Bethesda. I love the Fallout brand, and I'm a big enough fan that I know I want that and put my stupid phone in it. So during the conference, right, I pre-ordered it to make sure I had it because I knew that would be a limited run of that thing, right? But like that, what motivated me to get Fallout 4 right then and there on the day was the fact that it was a limited edition, special edition for a franchise I already know I love and a developer I like. You know what I mean? That's what motivated me to do it in that point. If I hadn't done it, and now here we were, and we're coming up on Tuesday, 9:01 p.m., you know what I mean, Pacific time out here, I guess Monday, 9:01 Pacific time, I'd still be like, all right, cool. If I hadn't gotten the game through hook or crook by now, I'd pre-order it and do it just so I'm ready to go. It's preloaded. Yeah. For me, pre-ordering is preloading, so it's ready to go, right? I did it with Batman Arkham Knight. Batman Arkham Knight was coming up, and I'm like, I already know that I love Rocksteady. I already know that I love Batman, and I went and bought the premium edition. So that at 9:01 p.m. I was ready to go, and I was ready to, you know what I mean? Like I had no doubts about it. I'm not pre-ordering every game I'm interested in, right? Like there's enough games that come out, and I'm like, I'd see how that one turns out before I throw money at it. But when it's Rocksteady, when it's Bethesda, when it's whoever, I know that I want it, and I'm at a fever pitch of excitement, and I want to play it right away.
Yeah. For me, a long time ago, it was like more of a Pip-Boy type situation where it's like where there's something that I want that I couldn't get otherwise. So with Zelda, with Wind Waker, if you pre-ordered, you got that, the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, Master Quest, whatever it is. Yeah. And I'm like, well, shit. Of course. I need that. You know what I mean? Other random things like Soul Calibur 2, you got the soundtrack CD. I'm really into video game soundtracks. That entices me. Yeah. Had Mario Galaxy come with the soundtrack, I would have wanted to pre-order for sure, you know? So there's certain things like that. If it's a fucking fanny pack or whatever, that was always just kind of like...
That shit I never really wanted, right? Yeah. I remember when I Maximo, Ghost of Glory. I was like totally like, read the previews. Boxers. Exactly. I love the previews and all this stuff. And that was the first game I ever ordered off of GameStop.com and had it delivered. And it came and I opened up and had a pair of boxers in there. I was like, oh, cool. That's not what motivated me, right? It was the ease and convenience of having it delivered to my dorm and not having to try to get a ride out to the mall to go get it.
And I guess that's the other thing is like with Amazon, especially with Prime, it's just kind of like, all right, if you pre-order it, you'll get it the first day.
And see, this is what I'm talking about, is that pre-order to me no longer means pre-order to get something. I pre-ordered that Doctor Who level pack, right? I played Lego Dimensions. I'm in love with Lego Dimensions. The Doctor Who part of the Lego Dimensions campaign, I was like, this is really fun. And the level packs have been great. Fuck yeah. And I just clicked the button and forgot about it because I didn't want to today have to go out or yesterday go out and try and find it, right? It just shows up. I'm like, oh, great, perfect.
And with Amazon Now, which is their new thing where like I'm not too sure of the details of this, but it's essentially it's as fast as humanly possible to get the thing from you ordering it to it coming to you. And a big push for them is wherever Amazon Now is available for Black Ops 3's launch, they'll get it to you for midnight, like for that midnight launch. And it's like we're just getting closer and closer to things like that where there is no even reason to ever leave your house.
Right. And that's the thing, right? Like midnight launches used to be a thing. Or I mean, they still are a thing, right?
Yeah.
But now when there's a game I want that bad for what I'm already saying it, right? 901, 901, 901, I just digitally get it, right? Or if it's like something I need physically, which is like the Lego thing, then just get it to me.
That's my biggest problem, the digital thing where I like the physical copy so much, but then that creates problems because I wanted it 901, but I can't get it then. I need to wait till midnight and it's
like when I got you a code for Metal Gear Solid 5 and then you bought Metal Gear Solid 5 so you had the box.
Yeah, I really wanted it. It's worth it. It looks really pretty.
I hear you. I'm with you. But yeah, I don't think pre-order means what it means anymore.
Yeah, no, for sure. But is there anything that can make you pre-order a game?
I used to pre-order a lot of games because, I mean, back in the day, PS1, PS2 era, I would say GameCube and all that kind of stuff is because it was just a way for me to pay the game off ahead of time. Yep. It was like it's like why I clean the house on Saturday so I don't have to do anything for football on Sunday. It's because everything's done and then I'm ready to go. So that was the only reason I used to do it. I didn't want like anything out of it. The last games I remember like really going and pre-ordering were like Resident Evil 0 and like the Resident Evil re-releases on GameCube. I don't know why I remember that so well, and I was in 2003, I think. So I didn't do much pre-ordering after that. People have to remember that back, especially in the cartridge era, there really were a finite amount of games. It wasn't clear that games would be republished ever. Because the allocation of chips were expensive and the allocation of cartridges it was hard. The example I use is Rings of Power was Naughty Dog's Genesis game. It was an RPG. And that game had, I think, one round of publishing of like 100 or 120,000 cartridges. And the game was successful. But as far as I understand, EA couldn't let them publish more copies of the game because the allocation of chips and cartridges were spent on Madden. And so they couldn't. They're like, we have no cartridges.
Right.
And so there, in other words, there was an imperative to pre-order back in the day if you really wanted something because it was not clear because there was no digital alternative and there was no, back in the day, I mean, they did it a little bit on NES and on SNES, but not to the degree they did it on PS1 and PS2, like the classics kind of series where they discount it. That really became a thing more, I mean, became a really common thing with PS1 games, especially with the green spine PS1 games and then the red spine PS2 games. But now there's an infinite amount of games. So there's no real reason to pre-order anything unless you want one of the pre-order bonuses, DLC or whatever physical good it is. Because if Metal Gear Solid 5 is going to sell 20 million copies, let's say, I mean it's not going to, but let's say it did, and they only published 10 million of them. Well, there's an infinite amount of them you can download. It's not like so. What would have me pre-order is a discount.
Yeah,
and
that's another thing. So like Gamers Club Unlocked from Best Buy, I don't know how familiar you are with this. It's a fucking great deal. You pay X amount of money a year for it, and like there's discounts on it all the time that make it like dirt cheap. Like you can get it for like $20, $30 for a year. And you get so many things that entices you to pre-order because it's like pre-order this, you get $5 off. And it's like if you buy games like every month, that shit adds up so quickly.
I think that's an enticing reason to pre-order.
Yeah.
Should you have to pay to pre-order, but yeah.
Darth Kovac says, "Hi guys, love your content. The topic is, what's the game you spent the most time in?" I think the highest I've ever seen at my in-game clock was 110 hours, which isn't that much.
Yeah.
In Final Fantasy X, because I wanted all the legendary weapons and all the blitzball bullshit, and I wanted everything. I platinumed that game.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, and it was my routine. Every day I'd play, and I played that game over a year, and I would just play like half hour here, half hour here, half hour here until that all happened. But I definitely think the game that I spent the most time in is Smash Bros. Specifically, I would probably give it to Brawl, like the most time dedicated to.
Yeah.
Brawl, Melee, and then the Wii U one. But if you count Smash Bros as just one thing,
as a franchise,
then definitely,
for sure.
That's hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Sure. I mean, for me, it's hard because like so many games don't put clocks on them, right? But I guess I can't think of. I mean, like I was talking about Metal Gear Solid 2, right? That I platinumed that. I did everything. I had the memory card. Everybody's heard that story. But in terms of sheer numbers, it's DC Universe Online, right? Like I'm 600 hours into that game. Last time they did a poll of my numbers, which is like sounds like a lot, right? But then you got Steimer at the end of the hall who put like she's put in couple like 1,000 something or other hours into Guild Wars 2. Like, I mean, like
That's just crazy.
that's just how MMOs are though, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure people now with Destiny are in that same loop of like how many.
That's the thing with like Alfredo. I can't even imagine how many hours he's put into his competitive shooting stuff.
Yeah.
Like Halo as a franchise. Holy shit. Like even Counter-Strike. The people that play Counter-Strike, my God, because they've been playing that since
For years.
Forever. Ooh, scary.
Yeah, I don't know. It's impossible for me to say. I've never spent 1,000 hours with anything. Probably games that I wrote guides for back in the day. I would say like Grand Theft Auto 4 is probably one I spent a lot of time with. Fallout 3 I spent about 3 months with. So 9 to 5 basically. So I mean that's a lot of time. But typically a game that I'll play for fun. I mean I'm gonna lose 50 hours. I'm gonna be like I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way I am now. I used to be much more patient with, and I wanted to spend more time with games back in the day because I felt like I was getting more bang for my buck. But it's just I'm an adult, and I now and you have a little bit more disposable income, and you're not married to these fucking.
The minute something doesn't have you,
decisions.
You can get out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's I kind of pride myself more on not spending a lot of time with a lot of these games anymore because it means that there's a more variety of games to play and there's other things to do. I could never spend 1,000 hours with a game. I just can't imagine a game even existing that would be so good in my mind that I would spend 1,000 hours with it, or 500 or 200 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Yeah, it's just me.
Amnesiac says, "Hi guys, just wondering what your thoughts are on emulation and video game piracy. Pirating a game that is still purchasable from the publisher on PSN or the Virtual Console, for instance, is wrong because you are not giving money to the people who created the game. But what about used games or games that aren't easy to find anymore? Take Little Samson on the NES, for example. That game fetches absurd amounts of money on the web, costs about $800, and has extremely little to no chance of ever being re-released in any form. So is it really that bad if you pirate it? Also, the creators aren't getting any of your money when you buy a used game either. What's your take on emulation and piracy, and when is it justifiable?" I think I might be looser than you are, guys, without hearing your answers. Like, to me, I think piracy is just part of the world and a part of how things work nowadays in the modern world, and they have been for the past 10 years. And while it is a bad thing, I think that the positives of it overcome the negatives in the sense that the people that aren't buying it, majority of them aren't going to buy it no matter what. But I do think that you are getting more people to buy it based on trying it out, seeing if they like it, and then getting into it. It's whether it's games, movies, music, anything. People are going to, if they're trying to steal it, they're going to steal it. There's no way to police that. So I think that it's just something you just kind of got to deal with. Like I think that when it comes to emulation and shit, I love it. It's a way for me to play games that I love. It's a way for me to play games that I didn't know about, that people have talked about before, that I just want to try and see if I like it. If they do release it on PSN or Virtual Console and all that, yeah, I'll want to buy it. But at the same time, a lot of the times emulation's better than their emulation. All that is emulation. Mm-hmm. So it's a question of money and where that money's going and all of that. And I don't know, I'll put my money where I need to put my money. But I think that if it's available and if you find a way to make it all work so that you can emulate games and stuff, that's on you. That's not the general populace, and that's not going to really make a big dent in anything. Same shit with us in videos. There's so many ways to scheme things to get all our shit free, even the stuff that we don't put out there free. It's a trust game. And it's one of those things where if we put out good products, people are going to want to pay for it. And if they see it for free, they're going to want it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you're off base. I mean, like, we always talk about supporting developers by new instead of used. That's in the moment. You know what I mean? That's I'm talking about in the moment. I'm talking about right now. You go out to buy Fallout 4, buy it new, so you get that. So the numbers are out. Don't wait for somebody to trade it in. You know what I mean? That's what I'm talking about in that moment. When we're talking about an NES game and stuff like that, it's muddled. He's making the point, right? Like, that money's not going to developers anymore. If it's going for $800 or whatever on eBay, that's going to one person. And also, I would argue most people are trying to collect that, not get it to play it. You know what I mean? Not to have it that. They want to round out.
You're telling me people don't want to play Little Samson?
No, they want to play it. That's why they're emulating it. I'm talking about they don't want to play that one cartridge. They're spending $800 trying to round out a collection, right? So when we get down to that point, it's one of those things where I talk about with like, what's happening with video game history? Who's looking after all this? Where is all this going? You know what I mean? There's somebody cataloging everything so people can see where you've come. And when you talk about that, then that's when emulation pops up and isn't a bad thing. You know what I mean? Piracy's bad in so many ways. You know what I mean? But I don't think in this sense it is, because where can you easily go to get those games and figure that out? Is Little Samson on the Virtual Console?
No.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And that's what I'm saying.
Who
You know
owns
what
the
I
rights
mean?
to that game anymore?
Big Samson.
I'm of I feel that my appetite for piracy or emulation really varies depending on what we're talking about in the games we're talking about. We have to start from an intellectually honest place with it, right? If you're emulating or you're pirating something, you're stealing it. And it doesn't matter if it's old or new. You're stealing it. And what you're doing is wrong and illegal in the main, right? I mean, and that's just where we have to start with the conversation. So I start from that place because I think that if a game is currently available and easy to find and reasonable to find, then it's probably wrong to pirate it. So that even might go back to your PS2 or your PS1, I mean, depending on the game you're talking about. But I think at some point, just being, again, intellectually honest, is it really financially destructive for you to emulate on Nesticle Batman from Sunsoft, which has no prayer of ever seeing the light of day again? Probably not. What you're doing is illegal. But is it as illegal or unsavory as
murder
going on a torrent and downloading Ex Machina, which just came out in the theater and is still very easy and cheap to find if you want to watch it as a movie, right? So I think we have to kind of look at these things in different kinds of ways. I don't think that it's necessarily wrong. It might actually be positive in some ways for people to be able to emulate NES games, because a lot of younger people or people that don't have the means to acquire these games will never have an opportunity to play what I think is the greatest catalog of games ever. So I think we just have to start from an intellectually honest place, call it what it is, but then discuss what our appetite is for it, depending on where we are and what we're talking about. I don't think all things are necessarily created equal. And I think when a game is completely out of print and impossible to find and all that kind of stuff, then is what you're doing as illegal? Yeah. Are you necessarily hurting anyone? Probably not. Do I endorse you doing this necessarily? No. I mean, I think it's fine. You do what you want. It's up to you. But I just think that we have to just be, it's the same thing I always talk about with ad blocking. I use an ad blocker now because I have read too much about these malware ads fucking people's computers up. And I'm like, all right, that's on you guys now. Like, that's not on me anymore. Like, if this is really what's happening with ads and they're fucking things up, then show me your ads when I know they're safe. Until then, I'm not playing this game where my computer might get fucked up or whatever. So, in other words, the impetus is on them to fix the problem. And some might argue in this regard that the impetus is on the license holders to proliferate these games if they don't want things to be pirated, but it's not always that easy. So so it's a very muddled gray area. And that's all it is. It's not good or bad. It's just muddled and fucked up.
Yeah.
And your opinion on it and your approach to it is going to be different.
Exactly. And the funny thing about this is, like, is it bad and is it wrong and is it stealing and is it whatever? Some of those things have answers and some of them don't. It is stealing. But guess what? Posting a picture you found on Google Images on your Twitter is stealing as well. So is that wrong? Are they equally wrong?
And that's what I'm saying. It's just the digital era has really confused the situation and made things difficult. And there's just hundreds of, when you really get down to it, by the time we're older, there are going to be hundreds of thousands of games, and of all stripes and all types and all indie to AAA and all these kinds of things. And to Greg's point, who's keeping an eye on this stuff? That's important too, from an historical point of view. But it's funny to see like some of these emulators not be able to deal with certain things. I remember there was an SNES, I think SNES X or whatever. I don't remember what it was called. Couldn't
X9.
X9, something like that. Couldn't do mode 7 or something like that. It would and then there are games today that are totally intentionally broken for people that pirate them, which I think is totally funny and fine to do. And I love hearing.
That was
stories.
funny. Yeah, the devs who put stuff in to trip people up.
Yeah, that. Like games just cannot be passed if you pirated them, and I think that's fine too. So there's ways for them to combat them. I do agree with your assessment anecdotally that there is no evidence that a person who pirates a game is necessarily intending on buying it. But there might be the rare person that pirates it with no intention of buying it and then does buy it. So,
that's
is there a benefit to it? There might be a benefit to it. I don't know. That was always the argument with Napster and shit like that back in the day too. And I don't think that was true. The music industry is fucking dying compared to the way it was 15 years ago. So it does move both ways. It is a super complicated issue. And my only thing is that I encourage people to play the games as they were intended to be played, if and when at all possible. So if you can get an NES, especially a top-loading NES, and acquire those cartridges, you should do that, because that is the way the game's played. And with so few moving parts, no moving parts in an NES or an SNES, those consoles will last a lot longer than PS4 will. To which is why people are confused about, or concerned about, well, how will I play these digital games? And I'm like, well, that will be figured out later. That's the other thing that bothers me, is that everyone, there's some people that act like it's like this some sort of noble, pirating is like some sort of noble thing you do to like sustain history. And I'm like, come on. That's why I'm saying, like, let's just be honest about the intent of it and go from there. Final
question of the day comes from Geeklet. What's the last game or console that you waited in a midnight line for?
None.
Wii.
Last console for me was Wii.
That was the question, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, game or console.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he said game
Yeah,
console.
yeah.
I see. I see what you're talking about.
Game
I
for me
caught
was
you.
Brawl. Even though I had it already.
Yeah.
Because I had the Japanese one. But then there was a tournament at GameSpot. Stop.
You got to go.
I was like, I had to do this. Fucking kick some ass because I had been playing for 3 months and those motherfuckers hadn't.
See, I was such a big pre-order. I can't think of a game line I stood in, right? Because I was always like, I'm not gonna stay up till midnight. I'll wake up in the morning or go after class or do whatever at the store.
I mean, I got the Wii U, but it wasn't. I mean, the Wii U wasn't a midnight release. It was a 8 a.m. release. So I went at like 4 in the morning and waited for that. Totally worth it to come home and play New Super Mario Bros.
Wasn't it?
Well, I mean, speaking of pre-orders, pre-ordering hardware was such a no-brainer,
Yeah, right.
and that's why like I didn't need to be there at midnight. Like I'll go the next day and get it. I never waited in line once for like anything like that, like nothing.
PS2
There's
and
not
Wii
like
are
a
the
single
only
thing.
things I can think of. The only consoles I can think of where I waited in line. Games wise, I can't think of anything.
Wow, there was so many games during that generation that I did.
See,
So many.
games were always like when I was into a game, like, and I always tell the story of WrestleMania 2000, right? Like when I was fucking in on WrestleMania 2000, I knew that someone in the area would break street date, and that's why I'd come home from school and call down a list of stores asking
check.
about it, and inevitably I'd get like I remember WrestleMania 2000 was the Walmart. Where I was like, yeah, do you have WrestleMania 2000? Like, yeah. And I was like, what? Thank you. What? Wait, what? Will you have it? And he's like, yeah. On N64, I'm like, yeah. Will you hold it? Like, no. I'm like, all right. Poof, and run out to the Taurus in there, tear out, dry, like fucking freaking out because that was the thing of like, I have to get it now.
Yeah,
before
this is it. This is the one.
Before any manager shows up and realizes this is
We
3
shouldn't do
days
this.
early.
Yeah, now that can't happen anymore.
I was at so many midnight releases: Halo 2, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. There's just so many games during that generation. Any game that had a real midnight release thing, because back then it wasn't everything.
See,
Now
that's what I
it's
feel like. I
everything.
feel like when you're talking about Grand Theft Autos and stuff like that, I remember getting those on release day and stuff. But I'm talking about in Columbia. Like I don't think the Columbia Mall did midnight launches
No.
for that stuff.
They definitely did here.
Like for my Wii, right? I went to the Columbia Mall at like 3 or 4 in the morning or whatever, where all the mall walkers are going, and then just sat next to another guy, and then eventually other people showed up, and then they opened the store at 10 or whatever, and we walked in, we ordered our Wiis, and then left, and then I came back at midnight or whatever and walked in. I was like, "Here's my paperwork."
God
He gave me a
bless
Wii.
you.
It's
My
like,
God.
great.
Things got so, like, things were different here. There's so many people.
Yeah.
And it's like, they didn't figure out that whole system until like the Wii U, where it's like, oh, you can come back later and you'll be fine. With the Wii, oh my
Yeah.
God, me and Kevin, we were on that goddamn Target block for like, we were there from 6 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next day. And that was the longest I've ever waited for something.
Yeah.
Not happy about that.
Sure.
One of my friends decided like he needed to sleep and he could only sleep in his boxers, decides to sleep in his boxers in public. It's like, it was the whole thing. Why is Yeah, he asked the people next to us to borrow their sleeping bag.
And then he got naked in it.
In his boxers.
To his boxers?
Yeah. And slept in a little sleeping bag.
Yeah.
And we got pizza. It was a whole, it was
It was
definitely
a
whole
rigor.
The only
experience.
time I ever
But,
waited online, like would wait online overnight for something, I guess it came to mind is when I was in college, I would go to Fenway Park, and when the Yankees were in town, I would go to, the Yankees would play in 3 or 4 game series at a time, and they'd be in town typically 3 times a year. I would wait in line overnight. Ramon and I did it once together. But you can buy the night before or the morning of every game, they'll distribute like 200 standing room tickets at $10 a piece for any game. They did. I don't know if they still do that. And so I would go to one of the games myself, and then I would buy tickets for the other ones and sell them to scalpers who would then sell them to other people and just make and I would just make a ton of money. And because the Yankees and the Red Sox were like, that was such a, I mean, it's still a heated rivalry, but that time in 2003, 2004, 2005 it was fucking hitting its peak. So, so that was the only time I ever did it. And it was for like, money.
Yeah.
I would sleep on the sidewalk next to like people and just wait and buy the tickets. And then there was like scalpers and they'd be like, all right, I'll give you $40 a ticket. And then they would turn around and sell them for $100 a ticket. And I just did that because I was like, all right, I don't want to get arrested or anything like that. So, and then I would go to one of the games myself and just hang out. So
Have fun.
yeah.
That topic brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is how we made kindafunny.com, and I am in love with how it looks and how simple it was to make. Sites look professionally designed regardless of skill level, no coding required. Intuitive and easy to use tools with state-of-the-art technology powering your site to ensure security and stability. Trusted by millions of people and some of the most respected brands in the world, including us. Starts at $8 a month, and you get a free domain if you sign up for a year. Start your free trial site today with no credit card required at squarespace.com. Maybe if you get on it right now, you can get a website with your name without an underscore or a kindafunny.net. That'll be a great
Fuck
fun
you, Nick
time.
Scarpino. You piece of garbage.
When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure to use the offer code kindafunnygames to get 10% off of your first purchase. Colin, take us home.
Build it beautiful.
Squarespace. Thank you guys so much. This has been the first ever episode 44 of the Kinda Funny Games cast. If you have topics for us, Kinda Funny forums. No, wait, hold on. kindafunny.com/gamescast topic. Yeah. Do that shit. It'll be good. And everything will be fun. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Until next time, I love you, Cisco.
Bye.
You love Cisco? I love Cisco.
I love Cisco.